Right, so we are now playing Immortal Unchained with a very different combat style as opposed to the Surge. It's going to take me a while to actually get used to back into playing this one because dodge is a different button. Like dodge is X in the Surge, and in this one it's circle. So it took me a while to actually get back into playing the Surge because I was used to circle as dodge, and now that I've actually been playing the Surge, it's going to take a while to get back used to using this. Anyway, yeah, so I didn't want to talk about combat in this one because combat's completely removed from Dark Souls because it's all shooting and stuff, which makes for interesting game. Like this game, yeah, just feels like any other shooter, to be honest. I don't think you get lots of different weapons that are meant to act like, you know, different styles of play, but when you can choose what weapon you use on the fly like that, I mean there's lots of different weapons, but when you can choose what weapon you want, you can actually just choose what weapon's best in what given situation. So just like any other shooter really, I feel, but with that sort of Souls-like twist where enemies don't see you until you aggravate them and whatnot, which is cool. But yeah, the reason, so that's why I didn't want to talk about combat in this one, but I did want to talk about setting because I think this game actually has a really cool setting. Like this game has most similar setting to Demon Souls setting, as in like, okay, this is like it's another sci-fi setting. The Surge is like a sort of like, I guess, hard sci-fi in that, you know, it's really, this could happen in the future. It's all like body replaced with machines and what have you, and that could really happen. Everything is really clunky, metallic, and it's like a sort of imaginable future. This is just this is sci-fi in space. Like this is completely out there, so a different sort of sci-fi environment, which is cool. And what I mean when I say it's similar to Demon Souls, not in setting per se, as in like setting, but as in structure. So this is like the main hub. Like in Demon Souls, you've got the main hub, and from the main hub you can go to different worlds. So these are all portals to different planets that I can go to, and you can go in any order. Again, that's just like Demon Souls. Demon Souls, you have like 5 different stones, and you can choose what world you go to in any order after a certain point through the game. This one, Demon Souls, I would say, is a lot less forgiving. You can actually choose which route you take. If you are struggling with one world, you can stop and just go into another one. Whereas this game, I would say that one's definitely the easy one, that one's the medium, and that one is hard because I'm getting raped bollocks in that one. That one I found difficult when I first entered, but that one was definitely doable as a first time player. So yeah, I like the idea that these 3 are open to you from the start, but I don't like the idea that it's definitely meant to be that, then that, and no amount of skill. I'll go into that one later, but no amount of skill can really overcome that. I feel like you do kind of need to level up to actually get back into that one. I mean, maybe skill does, but I'm just not that good at this game yet. But I have beaten 2 worlds, and I'm on the 3rd. So, but yes, what I was saying about the Surge shortcuts. Surge, I think, is done. So this one's done like Demon Souls. Surge is done like Dark Souls, I guess. Dark Souls is like one. I think setting wise or structure wise, at least, I prefer the Demon Souls way of going about it. I prefer the Demon Souls way of going about it in that, yeah. So you've got that hub, and you can go about it whichever way you want. And not only does that like allow you to be free with how you play through the game, but it also allows for the world to have like 5 completely different areas and 5 completely different worlds. Like the worlds don't have to be connected, and they're not. Like these worlds aren't connected. These are this is like a forest world. There's another like icy world, and then the last one's like a cyberpunk sci-fi world. And that's cool because you can have your different settings and that's exactly what Demon Souls is like as well. Demon Souls has like, you know, it's like worlds in Mario, for example. And I find that a lot better in a way than the way Dark Souls, I guess, does it. Because the way Dark Souls... Oh, fuck. What hit me there? It's like a tiny thing that hit me. Anyway. Ah, right, okay. Aiming is awfully dodgy in this because as much as I'm enjoying the settings of these games, the controls aren't very good. Like, that's the camera speed, and aiming speed is the same as the camera speed, and I cannot forgive that. Like, why? I've actually looked, and I cannot find the option to make aiming speed slower. Like, if I zoom in, I want that to be slow. I don't want that to be as fast as moving the camera like that. That is just like rookie mistake 101. But anyhow, you get used to it. But with sniping, like that was me sniping there. It's a bit difficult, I guess. But anyway, what was I saying about setting? Yes, so I think Dark Souls, one thing that doesn't really appeal to me about Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2, as I said, I've played, it's all one massive setting, which is fine, but I prefer this, like, the setting in games like this and Demon Souls. I just... I just feel like I know I would prefer it, because I prefer that style of it. Like, I prefer that sort of setup of like 5 different worlds. And one connected world is cool, but especially when I was playing the Dark Souls 2, it was like there's a lot of it, and a lot of it can feel samey. Like the Surge is a very good example of how all of that can feel very samey at times. Like a lot of the levels in the Surge just feel just kind of samey for that reason. Surge, I would say, is quite linear, but the worlds, or the levels themselves, as you saw, you go through them, and then you find the wee shortcuts, etc., etc. This does the same. This does it a lot better. That sort of more. This does it in that more fluid, natural way that I was talking about. So, and I'll show you with a very good example right here. This is fantastic. Like, so you've seen me play up until this point, and I just entered the level and then fought through all those bad guys. That's like the main way to go through the level. But through here, we secretive it through this shrubbery. Is like a save point, and that's like the bonfires for. Shouldn't go down there. And yeah, that's like the, respawn point there essentially. So I could have trudged through all those enemies to get to that respawn point. Cool, but what I only just found out once going through the level, what I found out afterwards, after getting to know the level and like what have you, I realised I could actually, this is the start of the level again, so instead of fighting through all those bad guys, I could have just run straight forward here and off here, and then, because obviously when you first enter the level, you look down, you see water, and you just think, well, I'm going to avoid going in that water. But actually, if I went in the water, I'd be able to stand, I'd be able to run in it, because there's actually a later part in the game where you can run about on water, so that made me think, a later part of this level where you do run about on water, that's like the main way. And that's really cool, really sort of fluid, and makes you think, oh, maybe I could stand on that other water. And you can. And then that takes you... Where do you think it takes me? It takes me right here. If so, and that's obviously, there were no enemies there, that was just me running right through to that obelisk, that point. And that's cool. Like that's what I mean. Like, instead of just having like a door that is locked at the very start, and you're like, well, I wonder where that's going to lead me. It just does it a lot more fluidly, just a lot better, in my opinion. And that's the sort of shortcut style that I think Demon Souls does as well. Does quite well as well. So yeah, this again, this combat system is weird in that it is shooting, but it's also got that sort of Souls combat, like slow, methodical combat in a way. I just realised I am digressing. I'm supposed to be talking about Souls and their settings and what appeals to me about them, which I kind of am, but I guess I'm talking more about this game, which is fine because this game is actually I'm enjoying my time with this game. Doesn't have very good shooting mechanics, but it's not meant to because it's an RPG. It's like Mass Effect. Like Mass Effect wasn't meant to have good shooting mechanics. Mass Effect was meant to be an RPG first, a shooter second, as this is as well. This is meant to be a Dark Souls clone first and a shooter second. And you know what? The shooting for the most part is competent. It's not. You see me there. What's that? I do lock on to enemies, so like you can lock on to enemies. You don't have to use the aiming. So obviously, in some ways, better. Who was shooting me there? So yeah, it's quite cool to have like the shooter and also that sort of like dodge mechanic and stuff like that. And it's cool. I'm just going up here because I want to show off another shortcut that I found cool. So again, yeah, that was me going through the level normally. But if I go through here, there is a ladder hidden behind this shrubbery. There's a ladder here. I go down this ladder. Now this ladder wasn't always here, but I had to kick this ladder down, and that leads me back to the same obelisk, which is really cool and organic and feels cool. And it's like when I was actually at this obelisk, I didn't even realise that there was a ladder there, like because it was high up there and I had to kick it down. So if I'd looked up, I would have seen the ladder, but that was just stone. There was no reason to really look up in this area. So I just never looked up, and then when I found that and found the ladder and everything, I was like, oh my god, that's another shortcut taking me back to the save point. And that obviously just means that once you die and respawn back here, you can then just go up the ladder and you're back kind of further on a level, and you don't have to so an X prompt for some. You do not have to then go through all the enemies that you went through before, which I just find really nice. And obviously, so that happens in the Surge as well, but the Surge is a bit less. I mean, it makes sense again in the setting of the Surge that it would have doors that are locked that you need to switch on the electricity to go through, but when that's every single shortcut, it's a bit boring. It's a bit unimaginative in a way. But yes, setting-wise, Dark Souls. Setting in Demon Souls appealed to me because of the different settings that were available. Like, because you have 5 different worlds, they're not all, it's not all the same world, and so therefore you're going to have different backgrounds, different landscapes, different feels to them. That's what really does appeal to me in Demon Souls. Like, that is really the Dark Souls games, or at least Dark Souls 2 from what I played, does have different environments obviously, but it's all one big interconnected world, like a Metroidvania. And there's just something about the I've got to say this as well, there's something about the big interconnected world that kind of makes, like, every character has to then be a part of that world, and therefore all the characters are connected. It makes it interesting in that the whole world is connected, but that doesn't particularly appeal to me as much as having a big game with lots of little separate worlds and the separate characters within those worlds. Like, I found the Demon Souls structure a lot better than Dark Souls 2 structure, for example, and Dark Souls 1 and 3 I believe are the same as Dark Souls 2, and then it's a big open world, and you just, there are different environments, like, lava castles and what have you. But this is cool. This is the neon sci-fi level, and so right from the bat, right from like entering the level, this is another thing that I don't think the Surge would do. But I'm gonna fight this enemy. This level is tough. Like, this level, I don't know how to properly fight. So you've got to like watch out for reloading. See, now I've gone through 2 levels, the first one and the second one, and these guys are still a pain in the ass to me. Like I should be over leveled at the moment, but I'm not. Anyway, so yeah, this I don't think you would really find on the Surge, because the Surge is quite linear in that, you know, you go through the level and then you see shortcuts off to the side and everything. But this one is instantly just like, I could either go that way or I could go this way. And okay, this ladder was not always there. I had to go around here to get that ladder down, and there's an enemy there, so I don't want to go around there now. But I went round there, fought the enemy, came out here, and then had to kick that ladder down, and then now instantly in this level there is either I could go over there or I could go this way, and that's like an instant fork in the road, which is again really cool and sort of that fluid that I keep talking about. So, but yes, anyway, wanted to I digress on this game. But so the whole openy one massive world, not too keen on. I much prefer the sort of Demon Souls setup of Demon Souls and this setup, I think, of yeah, different words, and the Mario setup, I guess. It's like comparing Mario to Zelda, I guess, in that way, in that Mario has different worlds, and Zelda is one big world. Bloodborne, however, obviously does have just the one open world. It's similar to Dark Souls in that way. Gun looks good. Is it good? I'll have a go of it. Yeah, so what's this? Mario, Zelda, open world. You do have a melee in this game, which isn't very useful, but I just, something in the back of my head sort of jotted down that, oh yeah, melee is a shield guy, I lost his shield quicker than shooting. Oh, I forgot what I was talking about. About settings. Dark Souls 2. Open worlds. Themes, I guess. I like the themes, as in like, this is a neon theme, that other level was like a forest theme. I like that you can have the varied themes, and in an open world, such as a Metroidvania or Dark Souls, you can also have those themes, but does that really make it feel like a real world if you have all those different like weird, like if you have a lava level and then an ice level? I guess it does, because there's like different aspects of it, but I think the sort of structure of the Souls games, especially, Souls games aren't massive, like Metroid Prime, for example, is massive. And because they are a bit more clumped together in a way, having lots of different environments doesn't feel as, I guess, natural, again, to bring it back to that, as a sort of Demon Souls style game where, or this style game where you have different worlds and different, like, you can, you know, teleport to different worlds and things. Because that obviously teleporting to different worlds allows you to have openly just like a neon city or a forest here or whatever, and you don't have to combine the two at any point, I guess, is what I mean. Like, you don't have to combine those two worlds to make the whole world, the world as a whole, believable, essentially. These are the dicks that like are really hard. I've never gotten this far now. This is the furthest I've got. There is also the overall like setting of, like, I think Dark Souls is more of like a sort of dark fantasy. Oh, lower ladder. I've just opened a wee shortcut. Cool. Yeah, Dark Souls is like a sort of dark fantasy. I remember reading something like Dark Souls 2 is a high fantasy, not a dark fantasy, and that something like that also made Dark Souls 2 appeal to me more than Dark Souls 1, because high fantasy is just like proper fantasy thrown in there. You can do whatever you want with the lore and the fantasy and whatever. Whereas dark fantasy, you've got to stick to sort of gothic. I don't know. I think Demon Souls is again very similar in sort of setting. These guys just teleport around. Those guys are really tough. Yeah. So I guess the Dark Souls settings as a whole don't really interest me because I'm not really that into fantasy. I'm more into sci-fi, obviously. The Demon Souls one did interest me because again it was back to the Yahtzee video where he described like a sort of going through tunnels slowly, like bricked tunnel, that sort of. It was a I guess, yeah, Demon Souls feels a bit more medieval. Rather than, like, there's no... I was going to say there's no strange beasts going about and everywhere, but there kind of is. But at the same time, everything feels very medieval, everything feels kind of like our world, but not about Demon Souls. Whereas Dark Souls 2 specifically, the one that I played, again, just felt completely... I don't know. Like, it was its own thing, it had, like, big monstrosity, like monstrous buildings and what have you, and everything seemed a bit grander than what Demon Souls made it. Demon Souls made it feel like it could be our world, but in a fantasy setting. But to be fair, when I initially went into Demon Souls, I didn't realise there were like 5 different worlds. I thought it was all going to be the first world, basically the sort of medieval style, usually medieval style setting even. But it turned out to be cool, and turned out that there were other worlds that also appealed to me, and yeah, Demon Souls has some really nice environments. And I don't think I speak much about Dark Souls 1 at least, because I haven't played it. But Dark Souls 2, yeah, had a weird whole atmosphere. It was very much like, I think this thing as well, like all the Dark Souls games are all about some sort of undead, like you are an undead character and that's why you can respawn infinite amount of times. I think in Demon Souls it's similar, but Demon Souls does it with a bit more, like, I think what happens with Demon Souls is that they explain everything, like everything that you do, the reason why you can respawn and everything is well explained, and I can't remember if it is because you aren't undead or if it's because, I think it's because you're carrying something that allows you to respawn when you die, or like you get given a gift that allows you to do so. But it's all like, all the items and all the reasons for doing all that is like in the lore itself, and I really enjoyed reading that. And then from what I can gather about Dark Souls 2 is that instead of giving something to the player character that allows them to respawn, they basically just say, oh, you're an undead, and undeads can respawn at bonfires, I guess. Like, they don't really explain it, they just kind of go, well, that was the mechanic in the first game, it's now the mechanic in these other games as well. And it's kind of similar in Bloodborne, although Bloodborne does have its own reasons as well. Bloodborne does go into a wee bit more explanation about why you can do what you do. The Bloodborne setting's really cool. Again, has the criticism of it all being very samey, because it's all one big world, but the Bloodborne setting is very cool because it's gothic. It's very gothic. It's all like werewolves and demons, I guess, and bloodlust and vampires almost. Maybe. Yeah, vampires are in it. Yeah, it's very, very gothic setting, very Castlevania. And that is what's cool. That is what's cool about Bloodborne's setting. Even though it is all the same. I don't think I'm going to get any further with this because those guys are dicks and always kill me. But yeah, Bloodborne has a very cool setting, and that's another thing that appeals to me about Bloodborne is that, so not only the combat, but like the setting of it, where it just felt very different from, you know, the games that From Software brought out before with the Souls games. So that setting is cool. I guess what made me as well go back and play Evergrace is, like I said, it was like sort of progress. Like Evergrace has a high fantasy, like a very high fantasy setting, like almost Disney fantasy setting. Oh, that'll be where the boss is. Interesting. Yeah, Evergrace is almost like a kid game in its setting. Like it's all bright colours. You've heard the music and just like stuff like that, like fighting skeletons in dungeons, sort of thing. And that I would say that Evergrace didn't exactly appeal to me as a game in and of itself, because I did have it like for ages. I bought it off P ages ago. And I mean, it's not that it didn't appeal to me back then. It did appeal to me, but I think when I started playing it, I just couldn't really get into it because I didn't really know the combat. And the reason I wanted to go back to it, and the reason I ended up enjoying it, is because I realised that the combat was a precursor to the combat of the Souls series in a way. The setting itself didn't really have anything to do with the appeal for it to me. But yeah, Evergrace was a cool game just to see the development, like just to see the sort of history of the series in a way. And atmosphere, I guess. I might go back because I can't see any way that I'm gonna. Oh fuck! Oh, dead. Like definitely dead. Oof, that was nice. Guess just hide behind stuff, right? Yeah, Evergrace didn't appeal to me, atmosphere or even combat-wise. Like, combat was okay for its time, but it was nothing special. But it was nice to see it as a precursor, I guess, to the other games. But I do think, like, every Dark Souls is kind of like a Final Fantasy, in they all have their own worlds. They're not sequels in the sense that they're connected to each other. I think Dark Souls 3 might be, from what I've read, but unconfirmed again. All of the games are kind of unconfirmed lore. Like let the players figure out everything, the game sort of thing. But yeah, essentially they're not really connected. They are just their own games, own separate worlds, and own separate. What the fuck? Okay. Like they're all their own separate things, so it's nice that, you know, they can have a series like that and then have it feel different each time in a way. So if I've opened all these shortcuts correctly, I should just be able to sneak by everything. Or should I? I'm now here. Fuck. Sniper. I've heard like a criticism of this game is that you cannot. Oh man. Like in the Surge, at least, for example, you can actually run through like past enemies, but in this game you just cannot. And the Soul games as well, you can do stuff like run past the enemies just to collect your souls, but this game seems like you actually have to go through methodically, and I think that's just a an aspect of it being like an indie game, essentially. Because it is an indie game, it is just they've made what they've made, and you know, it's decent, but it just means that every time you then have to die and respawn, you have to sort of go through the same enemies and pick them off and all that. Because you saw there, that was just like too many enemies spawned on me, and you cannot get away. There are snipers everywhere. You have to take them out. Snipers are quite annoying to fight in this game. Didn't want to aggro him. But oh, let's bring him into the fire. In fact, that would be fun. If I run past the fire, and he gets burned. Do you get burned? He does get burned, but not nowhere near enough. Yeah, I think there's not much more for me to say about setting. Fucking hell. Who the fuck did that? Why have they already seen me? This is what I mean, by the way, when I say like this level is apparently you cannot just go into this level. You need to have had like prior. I mean, all these enemies are completely new to this level. That's another thing I like about the setting, actually. In, for example, Demon Souls. Like, when you go into different worlds, they have different enemies. So you have to, like, learn each enemy's new stuff, which is quite cool. And like, how to deal with each new enemy type. And it's quite nice that the enemies actually belong to those worlds as well. Again, Dark Souls has that sort of open worldiness, and it does have different enemies in different areas, but that just means that you then have to tie those enemies into the overall world as a whole, so all the enemies kind of feel like they have to belong to the world. So that means that you're just creating enemies that belong to one big world, rather than creating a monster of different enemies that could belong to like these enemies belong to this world, the other enemies belonged to the forest world, etc, etc, you know. To be fair, I mean, this game's not that great an example, because all the enemies do end up just looking the same anyway, because it's handy. However, I'm going to think about where I'm going to... Never mind. Yeah, because it's an indie game, all the enemies do end up... My goal here is basically just to collect my tech, and then run back to the obelisk and use them, so that I can level up. That's all I want to do. But the snipers are making it hard. Yeah, but in Demon Souls, like, every world has its own enemies, which is really cool, and it means that, like, the developers could make enemies that fit those worlds, and they don't have to stick to the one big world that they have created, and make enemies that need to fit in those environments. I mean, it's not really a criticism, because they don't really do that anyway in Dark Souls games. They do have very different enemies and bosses and what have you. I mean, Dark Souls 2 had the criticism of, not my criticism personally, but Dark Souls 2 has the general criticism of there are too many enemies that are just like guys in armour, dudes in suits. There we go, just run back. Oh, looks there. I'm just gonna run. Too many dudes in suits was Dark Souls 2's criticism from people, and I guess that's because it all stems from that setting of like, you know, there was a war between dudes in suits and the enemies are all dead dude guys who have suits. Viridian Destroyer. I already had that gun, I thought. Anyway, I now wanted to show you the sort of leveling up system. I don't even have enough to level up. But yeah, leveling up system is basically you collect the tech, the XP or whatever, to then pump into these attributes, and these attributes level up stuff on the right hand side. And also tells you what gun you can use and whatever. But anyway, I think I've spoken enough. I'm going to end the video there. And hope you enjoyed looking at the Surge and Immortal Unchained. I don't know which one I prefer, actually. Like, I think the Surge's setting is cool. Combat is a bit slow and clunky. But I think this game's combat is cool, even though I guess that is... I don't know, I would want to lean towards the Surge, because the Surge is definitely a more polished game, but then you've got to respect this for like, it's being a wee indie game. It doesn't look amazing or anything, it's kind of... decent though. I prefer the level design in this, I have to say. Like, I think the level design has had a lot of thought put into it. Like, it feels really complex, and like you know, the paths going and like winding in and out each other. It's very, very cool. Whereas the Surge just feels like one big linear area that only branches off when it wants to give you a shortcut to return back to the main area. But then I haven't played each game to the full, so maybe there's more stuff to unlock, and might change my opinion. I don't know. Both decent games.